Tommy pressed his small face against the cool window of the car, watching the world rush by in a blur of green trees and gray highway. His legs were getting tired from sitting so long, and his stomach was making quiet rumbling sounds, but he didn't dare ask for food again. The last time he had asked, the man driving the car had given him such a scary look in the mirror that Tommy decided to stay very quiet. The man said his name was Uncle Mike, but Tommy had never seen him before 3 days ago. Uncle Mike had shown up at the group home where Tommy had been staying since the accident, carrying papers and talking to the grown-ups in serious voices. He told everyone he was Tommy's uncle from far away, and that he was going to take Tommy to live with more family members, who were excited to meet him. But something felt wrong in Tommy's tummy. Not the hungry kind of wrong, but the scared kind that made him want to hide under his blanket like he used to do during thunderstorms. His mom had always told him to trust that feeling, the one that made his skin feel prickly and his heart beat fast. She called it his inner voice, as she said it was there to keep him safe. Tommy missed his mom so much it made his chest hurt. He missed her warm hugs and the way she sang silly songs while making breakfast. He missed his dad too, who used to carry him on his shoulders and make funny voices when reading bedtime stories. They had been driving to Tommy's baseball game when the big truck ran the red light. Tommy was the only one who walked away from that terrible day, and even though everyone kept telling him it wasn't his fault, sometimes he wondered if maybe it was. The group home had been okay. The workers there were nice enough, and there were other kids to play with. But Uncle Mike said family was better than strangers, and that Tommy would be much happier living with people who really cared about him. When he said it, though, his smile didn't reach his eyes the way real smiles were supposed to do. Uncle Mike talked on his phone a lot while driving, speaking in a language Tommy didn't understand. Sometimes his voice got angry and sharp, and he would look at Tommy in the mirror with eyes that made Tommy want to disappear. During one phone call yesterday, Tommy heard him say numbers that sounded like money, and then Uncle Mike had laughed. In a way that didn't sound happy at all. At the last gas station, Uncle Mike had done something that really scared Tommy. While Tommy was in the bathroom, he saw Uncle Mike throw away the folder that had Tommy's important papers in it. Tommy knew. Those papers were important because the group home workers had made such a big deal about keeping them safe. When Tommy came out and asked about the folder, Uncle Mike said he didn't know what Tommy was talking about and told him to stop asking questions. Now they were pulling into a big rest stop with lots of cars and people. Tommy could see families sitting at picnic tables outside, eating lunch and laughing together. A mom was pushing her little girl on a swing while a dad grilled hot dogs nearby. The scene made Tommy's heart ache with longing. He remembered going to places like this with his own parents, how his dad would always buy him a chocolate ice cream and his mom would pack sandwiches. Cut into funny shapes, Uncle Mike parked the car near the back of the parking lot, away from most of the other cars. He turned around and looked at Tommy with those cold eyes again. "Listen carefully, kid," Uncle Mike said, his voice low and serious. "We're going to go inside so I can use the bathroom and get some food. You're going to stay right next to me. The whole time? Don't talk to anyone, don't ask anyone for help, and don't do anything stupid. Do you understand me?" Tommy nodded quickly, even though every word made his stomach feel more twisted up. Why would Uncle Mike think he would ask someone for help? And why did he call it stupid? Tommy's mom had always taught him that asking for help was the smart thing to do when something felt wrong. As they walked toward the big building, Tommy noticed how Uncle Mike kept looking around nervously, like he was worried someone might see them. His hand gripped Tommy's shoulder tight enough to hurt, and he kept pulling Tommy closer whenever other people walked by. Inside the rest stop, there were so many people. Families were buying snacks and souvenirs, truck drivers were getting coffee, and kids were running around while their parents tried to keep up. It all looked so normal and happy, like the kind of place where nothing bad could ever happen. But Tommy still felt that scared feeling in his tummy. Stronger than ever, Uncle Mike steered him toward the bathrooms, but not before stopping at a payphone near the entrance. He made another one of those calls in the strange language, his voice getting angry again. Tommy heard him say those money numbers again, and this time Uncle Mike looked right at him while saying them, like Tommy was part of whatever deal he was making. When Uncle Mike hung up the phone, he grabbed Tommy's arm tighter than before. "Remember what I told you," he whispered harshly. "Stay quiet and stay close. We'll be out of here soon, and then you'll meet your new family." But Tommy didn't believe him anymore. Something in Uncle Mike's voice told him that whatever was waiting at the end of this trip, it wasn't a loving family excited to meet him. The scared feeling in his tummy was now screaming at him to run, to find help, to do something before it was too late. As Uncle Mike disappeared into the men's bathroom, leaving Tommy standing by the door with strict instructions not to move, Tommy looked around at all the people walking by. Normal people. Safe people. People who looked like the kind of grown-ups his mom had taught him to trust if he ever needed help. Tommy's heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. He remembered something his teacher had taught the class about staying safe, about special signals that could tell good grown-ups when a kid needed help without having to say anything out loud. He had practiced the hand signal with his classmates, never thinking he would actually need to use it. Now, standing in this busy rest stop with danger feeling closer than ever, Tommy started looking for someone who might understand his silent cry for help. Someone who looked kind and safe and smart enough to know what a scared little boy's hand signal meant. His eyes searched the crowd, hope and fear battling in his chest as he prepared to make the bravest decision of his 6-year-old life. Tommy stood frozen by the bathroom door, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Uncle Mike had been very clear about staying right here, but every fiber in Tommy's body was screaming at him to run. The problem was, where could a 6-year-old boy run to? He didn't know where he was, didn't have any money, and didn't even know how to call the police from a payphone. The rest stop buzzed with activity around him. People walked past carrying sodas and bags of chips, completely unaware that a little boy was standing there feeling more scared than he'd ever felt in his life. Tommy watched a family walk by, the mom holding a baby while the dad carried their toddler on his shoulders. The little boy on his dad's shoulders was laughing and pointing at things safe and happy and loved. Tommy remembered being that little boy once, remembered feeling completely safe because his parents were there to protect him. But his parents were gone now, and Tommy was beginning to understand that Uncle Mike wasn't there to protect him at all. A teenage girl walked past, talking loudly on her phone about some drama at school. For a second, Tommy thought about tugging on her shirt and asking for help, but she looked busy and might not understand. Plus, Uncle Mike had made it very clear what would happen if Tommy talked to anyone. The way Uncle Mike's eyes had gotten cold and scary when he said it made Tommy believe that disobeying would be very, very bad. Tommy's mind raced back to the safety lessons at school. Mrs. Rodriguez had taught their class about stranger danger, but she'd also taught them about what to do if they were already in trouble. She'd shown them the special hand signal, the one that could tell a safe grown-up that a child needed help without having to say anything out loud. Sometimes, Mrs. Rodriguez had explained to the class, kids might be in a situation where they can't ask for help with words. Maybe the dangerous person is right there listening, or maybe the child is too scared to speak. That's when this signal can save your life. Tommy could picture her demonstration perfectly. Tuck your thumb into your palm, then close your other fingers over it. Hold it where someone can see it. The signal meant, "Help me," in a secret language that some adults knew about. At the time, Tommy had thought it was just another school lesson, like learning about fire drills or how to cross the street safely. He never imagined he'd actually need to use it, but now, standing in this busy rest stop with danger closing in around him, that lesson felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. A security guard walked past, and Tommy's hope jumped. Security guards were supposed to help people, right? Tommy took a small step forward, ready to make the signal, but then he saw Uncle Mike emerging from the bathroom. Tommy quickly stepped back to his spot, pretending to look at a rack of postcards. Nearby, Uncle Mike's eyes swept the area suspiciously, like he was checking to make sure Tommy hadn't moved or talked to anyone. When he saw Tommy standing exactly where he'd left him, some of the tension left his face. "Good boy," Uncle Mike said, but there was no warmth in his voice. "Now we're going to get some food and you're going to stay right next to me. Remember what I told you?" They walked toward the food court area, Uncle Mike's hand clamped tightly on Tommy's shoulder. Tommy could smell French fries and pizza, and his stomach reminded him again that he was hungry. But the scared feeling was much stronger than the hungry feeling now. The food court was crowded with travelers taking a break from their journeys. Tommy saw truck drivers eating alone at small tables, families sharing meals and laughing together, and business people typing on laptops while sipping coffee. Everyone looked so normal, so safe. If only he could somehow let one of them know that he needed help. Uncle Mike steered him toward a table in the corner, away from most of the other people. "Sit here and don't move," he ordered. "I'm going to get us some food? If anyone talks to you, don't say anything back. Just ignore them." As Uncle Mike walked toward the pizza counter, Tommy felt a tiny spark of hope. This was his chance. Uncle Mike was far enough away that he couldn't hear what Tommy might say, but close enough that he could still see him. Tommy would have to be very careful. He looked around the food court, studying the faces of the adults nearby. There was an older woman reading a book while eating a salad. She looked kind, like she might be a grandmother. Tommy considered trying to signal her, but she seemed focused on her book and might not notice. Another table. A young couple was sharing a bag of chips and talking quietly to each other. They looked nice, but they were absorbed in their conversation and each other. Then Tommy's eyes landed on a man sitting alone at a corner table. He was wearing what looked like a military uniform, the kind Tommy had seen in parades on TV. The man looked strong and serious, but not mean serious like Uncle Mike, more like protector serious, the way police officers looked on TV shows. The soldier was eating a sandwich and drinking coffee, but Tommy noticed that his eyes kept moving around the room, like he was watching everything that was happening. That seemed like a good thing, Tommy thought. A person who paid attention to things might notice a scared little boy trying to ask for help. Tommy glanced back at Uncle Mike, who was still standing in line at the pizza counter, talking on his phone again. This was Tommy's chance, maybe his only chance. With trembling hands, Tommy tried to remember exactly how Mrs. Rodriguez had shown them to make the signal. Thumb into palm first, he remembered. Then fold the other fingers over it. He pressed his thumb down into his palm and slowly closed his fingers over it, making what looked like a fist, but was really a secret message. Now he just had to get the soldier to look at him. Tommy raised his hand slightly and kept it where the soldier might see it. But the man was looking in the other direction, watching a family with young children at a nearby table. Tommy's heart sank. What if the soldier never looked his way? What if Uncle Mike came back before Tommy could get anyone's attention? Tommy tried waving his hand a little, still keeping the signal. Finally, the soldier's gaze swept across the food court and landed on Tommy. For a moment, their eyes met across the busy room. Tommy held up his hand with the signal, his heart pounding so hard he was sure everyone in the food court could hear it. The soldier's expression changed subtly, his eyes focusing more intently on Tommy. Tommy could see the exact moment when the man recognized what the hand signal meant. The soldier's face remained calm, but something shifted in his posture. He sat up straighter, more alert. Then, very quietly, so quietly that Tommy almost missed it, the soldier mouthed two words that filled Tommy with hope. "I see you." Tommy felt tears of relief start to form in his eyes, but he quickly blinked them away. He couldn't let Uncle Mike see him crying. Couldn't let Uncle Mike know that he'd found someone who understood his silent cry for help. The soldier gave the tiniest nod, just enough for Tommy to see. Then he casually reached for his phone, never taking his eyes completely off Tommy and Uncle Mike. For the first time in 3 days, Tommy felt like maybe, just maybe, he was going to be okay. Staff Sergeant David Chun had been looking forward to this moment for months. After 18 months overseas, he was finally heading home to see his family. The long drive from the military base to his hometown had been peaceful, giving him time to think about civilian life again and all the things he'd missed while deployed. Simple things like his sister's cooking, his nephew's baseball games, and just sitting on his front porch without having to worry about incoming danger, he'd stopped at this rest area because the coffee at the gas station before had been terrible, and he needed something decent to keep him alert for the remaining hours of driving. The food court was busy but not overwhelming, exactly the kind of normal, everyday American scene he'd been dreaming about during those long nights on guard duty, but old habits died hard. Even though he was officially on leave, Chun's eyes automatically scanned his surroundings the way they'd been trained to do. It wasn't paranoia, just professional awareness that had kept him and his fellow soldiers alive in dangerous places. Watch the exits, note who's coming and going. Pay attention to behavior that doesn't fit the normal pattern. Most of what he saw was perfectly ordinary. Families on road trips, truck drivers grabbing quick meals, teenagers probably heading to or from college. Everyone looked relaxed and happy to be taking a break from the highway. Chin started to let his guard down, thinking maybe he could finally learn to turn off that constant vigilance that military life had drilled into him. That's when he noticed the little boy. At first, it was just a feeling, the kind of sixth sense that good soldiers develop after years of reading situations and people. Something about the child's body language caught his attention. The boy was sitting alone at a table, but he didn't look like a kid whose parents had just stepped away for a minute. He looked tense, alert in a way that kids shouldn't have to be. His small shoulders were hunched, and he kept glancing around nervously. Chun had seen that look before, unfortunately. In war zones, civilians who were in real danger often had that same mixture of fear and desperate hope in their eyes. Children, especially when they were caught in situations beyond their control and looking for anyone who might help them. Then Chun saw the hand signal, and everything clicked into place. The boy was holding his hand in a very specific way, thumb tucked into palm with fingers closed over it. Ching had learned about that signal during a briefing about human trafficking awareness. It was something that had been developed to help victims communicate distress when they couldn't speak freely. Most people wouldn't recognize it, but military personnel, law enforcement, and other first responders were taught to watch for it. Chun's training kicked in immediately. Don't react dramatically. Don't stare. Assess the situation calmly and figure out what kind of threat you're dealing with. He casually looked around the food court, searching for whoever might be controlling or watching the boy. It didn't take long to spot him. There was a man at the pizza counter who kept glancing back at the boy's table, not with the loving concern of a parent, but with the sharp watchfulness of someone making sure their target didn't move. The man looked agitated, stressed in a way that didn't match the casual atmosphere of a rest stop. He was talking on his phone, but his eyes never stayed off the boy for more than a few seconds. Chun had seen enough suspicious behavior in his military career to recognize it immediately. The way the man positioned himself to block the boy's view of other adults, how he kept the child isolated at a corner table away from other families, the constant phone calls and nervous checking over his shoulder. Even the man's body language screamed that he was doing something he shouldn't be doing. Looking back at the little boy, Chun could see the fear more clearly now. The child was trying to be brave, but his eyes held the kind of terror that comes from being completely helpless and knowing it. Chun had seen that look on the faces of civilians caught in dangerous situations overseas, and it always hit him hard. But seeing it on an American child in what should have been a safe place made his protective instincts surge even stronger. Chun made eye contact with the boy again and very quietly mouthed the words, "I see you." He wanted the child to know that his signal had been received and understood. The relief that flooded the boy's face confirmed Chun's worst suspicions. This wasn't a misunderstanding or an overprotective relative. This was a child in genuine danger, reaching out for help in the only way he could. Now Chun had to figure out how to help without making the situation worse. His military training had taught him that rescue operations required careful planning, especially when civilians were involved. Move too fast or too obviously, and you could escalate the danger for the victim. But wait too long, and you might lose your chance to act at all. Chun pulled out his phone and quickly dialed 911. Keeping his voice low and his body language casual so he wouldn't attract attention from the man at the pizza counter. "This is staff. "Sergeant David Chun," he said quietly when the dispatcher answered. "I'm at the rest area on Interstate 75. Mile marker 234. I have a possible child abduction situation in progress. There's a young boy, maybe 6 years old, who just gave me a distress signal. He's with an adult male who doesn't appear to be a legitimate guardian." The dispatcher was professional and quick, asking Chun to describe the situation in more detail while she got police units headed to his location. Chun gave her a careful description of both the boy and the man, noting the man's nervous behavior and the child's obvious fear. "Units are en route," the dispatcher told him. "Can you maintain visual contact with the subjects without putting yourself or the child in danger?" "Affirmative," Chun replied. "I'm going to try to delay their departure until your units arrive." Chun had been in enough dangerous situations to know that timing was everything. The man at the pizza counter was getting food, which meant he'd be returning to the table soon. Once he had the boy back under his direct control, they'd probably leave the rest area quickly. Chun needed to buy time for the police to arrive, but he had to do it in a way that wouldn't spook the man into doing something desperate. The man was walking back toward the table now, carrying a slice of pizza and still talking on his phone. Chun could see the boy tense up as his captor approached, the small shoulders hunching even more. The contrast between the man's false casual behavior and the child's genuine fear was stark once you knew what to look for. Chun stood up from his table and casually walked toward the restrooms, timing his path to intersect with the man's route. Back to the boy. As he passed nearby, he pretended to stumble slightly, apologizing politely and striking up a brief conversation about directions. "Excuse me," Chun said in his most friendly, harmless voice. "I'm trying to get to Route 23 from here. Do you know which exit I should take?" The man looked annoyed at being stopped, but Chun's military bearing and polite tone seemed to catch him off guard. I'm not from around here," the man replied, clearly wanting to end the conversation quickly. "Oh, well, maybe someone inside would know," Chun said, blocking the man's path just enough to be annoying without being obvious about it. "Are you traveling far today?" Chun could see the boy watching this interaction with hope in his eyes, and he could feel the man's growing irritation and desire to get away from this unexpected attention. In the distance, Chun caught the first sound of sirens approaching. Uncle Mike was getting more annoyed by the second. Chun could see it in the way the man's jaw clenched and how his eyes kept darting toward the exit doors. The friendly conversation about directions had stretched on longer than any normal person would tolerate, and Uncle Mike was clearly suspicious about why this soldier was being so chatty and helpful. "Listen, I really need to get going," Uncle Mike said, trying to step around Chun. "My nephew and I have a long drive ahead of us." Chun smoothly shifted his position, still maintaining his friendly demeanor while effectively blocking the path. Back to Tommy's table. "Oh, you're traveling with family? That's nice. My nephew is about that age, too. Kids can be such great travel companions, can't they?" The comment was carefully chosen. Chin watched Uncle Mike's reaction closely, noting how the man's face tightened at the mention of the boy. A real uncle would probably smile or share a story about traveling with his nephew. Instead, Uncle Mike looked like he'd been caught doing something wrong. "Yeah, sure," Uncle Mike muttered, clearly not wanting to discuss Tommy at all. "Look, we really do need to go. The kid gets carsick if we stop too long." Chun glanced over at Tommy, who was still sitting at the corner table, and his heart ached for the child. The boy was watching their conversation with a mixture of hope and terror, probably wondering if this strange adult would really be able to help him, or if Uncle Mike would find a way to get them out of there before help arrived. The sirens were getting closer now, though they were still faint enough that most people in the busy food court probably couldn't hear them yet. Chun needed to keep stalling for just a few more minutes. "You know what?" Chun said, pulling out his phone as if he'd just thought of something. "I think I have a map app that might help both of us figure out the best route. Mind if I take a quick look?" Uncle Mike's patience finally snapped. "No, I don't need help with directions. We're leaving now." He pushed past Chun more forcefully this time, heading straight for Tommy's table. Chun followed at a casual distance, pretending to check his phone while actually keeping both Tommy and Uncle Mike in sight. He could see Uncle Mike grab the boy's arm and pull him to his feet roughly. "Come on, kid." "Time to go," Uncle Mike said loud enough for Chun to hear. But his grip on Tommy's arm was tight enough that the boy winced, and Sheen could see fear flooding the child's face again. Tommy looked back at Chun with desperate eyes, silently pleading for the help that had been promised. Chun gave him the smallest nod, hoping the boy would understand that this wasn't over. That help was still coming. Uncle Mike started marching Tommy toward the exit, moving faster now and clearly wanting to get out of there before the friendly soldier could delay them any further. Other people in the food court were going about their business, completely unaware of the drama playing out right in front of them. Chun had to make a decision. The police sirens were much clearer now, probably less than a minute away, but Uncle Mike was almost to the exit doors. If Chun let them get to their car, there was a good chance they'd drive away before the police could stop them. But if he intervened more directly, he might escalate the situation and put Tommy in more danger. That's when Tommy made the bravest decision of his young life. As Uncle Mike pulled him past a family with young children, Tommy suddenly twisted away from the man's grip and ran toward the family. "Help me," he called out, his small voice cutting through the noise of the busy food court. "He's not my uncle. Please help me." The family looked shocked, the parents immediately moving to protect their own children while trying to understand what was happening. Other people in the food court stopped eating and talking, turning to see what the commotion was about. Uncle Mike's face went dark with anger and he lunged after Tommy. "Get back here right now," Uncle Mike shouted. "Don't listen to him. He's just upset about leaving his friends behind." But Tommy kept backing away, staying close to the other families and continuing to call for help. "He threw away my papers. He's been making scary phone calls." "I don't know him." Chun moved quickly but carefully, positioning himself between Uncle Mike and Tommy without being aggressive about it. "Hey, now," he said in his calm, authoritative voice, "let's everybody just take a breath here. What seems to be the problem?" Uncle Mike was trapped now. He couldn't grab Tommy without going through Chun and several other concerned adults, but he also couldn't just walk away and leave the boy behind. The sirens were loud enough now that everyone could hear them, and Uncle Mike's eyes kept flicking toward the exit doors like a trapped animal looking for escape. "There's no problem," Uncle Mike said, but his voice was shaky now. "The kid's just having a tantrum because he doesn't want to leave. Tommy, stop embarrassing yourself and come here right now." But Tommy shook his head firmly, staying behind the protective barrier of concerned adults who had gathered around him. "His name isn't Tommy," he said quietly. "My name is Tommy. He doesn't even know my name." Chun felt a surge of pride for the boy's courage. Even scared and overwhelmed, Tommy was thinking clearly enough to point out inconsistencies in Uncle Mike's story. It was exactly the kind of detail that would help the police understand what was really going on. The sirens were right outside now, and through the large windows, Ching could see police cars pulling into the parking lot. Uncle Mike saw them too, and the color drained from his face. He made one last desperate attempt to reach Tommy, but Chun smoothly stepped into his path. "I think we should all just wait here until the officers can sort this out," Chun said firmly. "I'm sure there's a simple explanation for all this confusion." Two police officers entered the food court, their trained eyes quickly taking in the situation. Chin had been around law enforcement enough to know good cops when he saw them, and these two looked competent and experienced. They approached the group calmly but alertly, clearly ready to handle whatever they found. "Good afternoon, folks," the first officer said. "We got a call about a possible situation here. Can someone tell me what's going on?" Chun stepped forward, identifying himself as the person who had called 911. "Officer, I'm Staff Sergeant David Chun. I observed this child making a distress signal, and when I tried to verify his welfare, the situation escalated." The second officer knelt down to Tommy's eye level, speaking in a gentle voice that immediately put the boy more at ease. "Hi there, son. I'm Officer Rodriguez. Can you tell me your name?" "Tommy Martinez," the boy said quietly. "And he's not my uncle. I don't know who he is, but he's not my family." Uncle Mike tried to interrupt, but Officer Rodriguez held up a hand. "Sir, we'll get to you in a moment. Let the boy finish talking." Tommy took a deep breath and told the officers about being taken from the group home, about the thrown-away papers, and about the scary phone calls. With each detail, Uncle Mike looked more and more like a man whose lives were falling apart. "Do you have any identification, sir?" the first officer asked Uncle Mike. "And can you provide documentation showing your legal relationship to this child?" Uncle Mike's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, he had no answer, no smooth explanation, no way to talk himself out of the corner he'd been backed into. Uncle Mike stood there like a man watching his whole world collapse around him. His mouth kept opening and closing, but no words came out. The confident, threatening person who had controlled Tommy for 3 terrifying days was gone, replaced by someone who looked small and desperate and caught. I left the papers in the car," Uncle Mike finally stammered. "This is just a misunderstanding. The boy is confused because he's been through trauma. His parents died and he's not thinking clearly." But Officer Rodriguez had been doing this job for 15 years, and she knew the difference between a confused child and one telling the truth about being in danger. Everything about Tommy's body language, his detailed story, and his obvious relief at seeing the police told her that this little boy had been genuinely scared for his life. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me while we sort this out," Officer Rodriguez said to Uncle Mike. "And you," she said gently to Tommy, "are going to stay right here with Officer Johnson while I make some phone calls. You're safe now." "Okay," Tommy nodded, but Chun could see that the boy was still shaking. Even though the immediate danger was over, Tommy was exhausted from 3 days of fear and stress. Chun knelt down next to the child, speaking in the same calm voice he'd used with scared civilians overseas. "You did exactly the right thing," Chun told Tommy. "You were so brave, and you helped these officers understand what was really happening. Your parents would be very proud of you." Tommy's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't sad tears anymore. They were relief tears, the kind that come when you've been holding your breath for so long that you forgot what normal breathing felt like, while Officer Johnson stayed with Tommy. Officer Rodriguez walked Uncle Mike toward the exit to question him more thoroughly. Chun could see other officers arriving outside, and he knew that Uncle Mike's story was about to unravel completely. It didn't take long. Within an hour, the police had run Uncle Mike's fingerprints and discovered that his real name was different from what he'd told the group home. He had a criminal record in 3 states, mostly for fraud and identity theft. When they searched his car, they found multiple fake identification documents, a stack of cash that didn't match his supposed job, and most damning of all, a notebook with names and descriptions of other children. The investigation that followed revealed something much bigger and scarier than anyone had initially realized. Uncle Mike wasn't just some random criminal who had decided to take one child. He was part of an organized network that specialized in taking kids who wouldn't be missed right away. Orphans, runaways, children in group homes, kids whose disappearance might not be noticed for days or weeks. Tommy's case broke the whole thing open. The phone numbers in Uncle Mike's phone led police to contacts in 4 different states. The notebook contained information about 12 other missing children, some of whom had been gone for months. Within a week, law enforcement agencies across the region were coordinating raids and rescues, but all of that investigation and police work happened in the background. For Tommy, the most important thing was much simpler. He was safe, and people who actually cared about his welfare were taking care of him. A social worker named Ms. Peterson arrived at the police station that evening. She was nothing like the overwhelmed workers at the group home. Miss Peterson sat with Tommy for a long time, letting him tell his story at his own pace and asking gentle questions to help her understand what he'd been through. "Tommy," she said when he finished talking, "I want you to know that what happened to you was not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. The only person who did something wrong was the man who took you from the group home by lying about who he was." Tommy had been worried about that. During the long car ride, Uncle Mike had told him several times that if Tommy ever told anyone what was happening, He'd get in trouble for being a bad kid who caused problems. Hearing Ms. Peterson say that none of it was his fault felt like a heavy weight being lifted off his shoulders. Chun had stayed at the police station to give his statement and make sure Tommy was okay. Before he left to continue his journey home, he asked if he could say goodbye to the boy who had shown such incredible courage. "I want you to remember something," Chun told Tommy as they sat in the police station waiting area. "What you did today. Making that signal and asking for help, that took more bravery than most adults ever have to show. You saved yourself and you probably saved other kids too." Tommy looked up at Chun with serious 6-year-old eyes. "Will I see you again?" Chun smiled. "I hope so, buddy. And even if we don't see each other for a while, I want you to know that there are good people everywhere who will help you if you need it. You just have to be brave enough to ask like you did today." They shook hands solemnly and then Chun was gone, continuing his drive home to his own family, carrying with him the knowledge that his military training had helped save a child's life in the most unexpected way. For Tommy, the next few months were a whirlwind of interviews with investigators, therapy sessions to help him process his trauma, and slowly adjusting to life in a new foster home. Miss Peterson had found him a family that specialized in caring for children who had been through difficult experiences. They were patient and kind, and they understood that Tommy would need time to trust again. The Hendersons were different from any adults Tommy had lived with since his parents died. Mr. Henderson was a retired teacher who loved baseball, and Mrs. Henderson was a nurse who seemed to have an endless supply of hugs and homemade cookies. They had raised several foster children over the years, and they knew how to help scared kids feel safe again. It took almost a year, but gradually Tommy began to believe that these people weren't going anywhere, that they actually wanted him to stay, and that he could trust them to protect him. When they asked if he'd like them to adopt him officially, Tommy cried happy tears and said yes. 3 years later, when Tommy was 9 years old, something wonderful happened. Mrs. Henderson saw a story in the newspaper about a local ceremony, honoring citizens who had performed acts of heroism. One of the people being honored was Staff Sergeant David Chun, who was being recognized for his role in stopping a human trafficking operation. The Hendersons drove Tommy to the ceremony, where he got to see Chun again for the first time since that day at the rest stop. Chun looked surprised and delighted to see how much Tommy had grown and how happy and healthy he looked after the ceremony. Tommy gave Chun a card he had made himself. On the front he had drawn a picture of 2 people, one big, one small, with their hands reaching toward each other. Inside, in his careful 9-year-old handwriting, he had written, "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't speak. You helped me find my voice again." Chun read the card twice, and when he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Tommy," he said, "you were always brave. I just helped you remember that you had the right to be safe." The ceremony and the reunion reminded everyone there that day about something important. Sometimes the most powerful communication happens without words, and the simple act of truly seeing someone, really noticing when they need help, can change everything. Tommy's story became a reminder that courage comes in all sizes and that being willing to reach out for help and being willing to offer it can create connections that last a lifetime.